What if you were asked to leave everything behind, for a one-way trip to Mars? That was the question Ava Morgan couldn't get out of her head as she stood barefoot in her dimly lit kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound competing with the rain pelting against the window. It was past midnight, and the storm outside roared like a warning, but inside her home in Austin, Texas, the glow of the television screen reflected in her wide, sleepless eyes. There, standing beneath a glowing model of Earth slowly rotating behind him, Elon Musk had just said the words that would ripple across the world and pierce the walls of every living room: Starship will carry the first humans to Mars, this year. The live broadcast exploded with headlines, news tickers flashing in red, anchors scrambling to interpret what they'd all just heard. Ava barely blinked. Her hands trembled as she clutched a chipped mug of coffee she no longer tasted. Her 9-year-old daughter Lily padded into the room, rubbing her eyes, her voice sleepy and curious. "Is that real, Mommy? Are we really going to Mars?" Ava forced a small smile and nodded slowly. "Looks like it, baby." Lily looked at the screen, then back at her mother with the kind of innocent clarity only a child could summon. "Would you go?" The question hit her harder than the thunder outside. Would she? Could she? In her heart, she knew the answer had lived inside her since she was a child lying on the roof of her father's house, staring up at the stars to escape a world that never made her feel at home. The world felt different now. The world was listening. And so was she. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Ava set the mug down and walked over to the screen, watching Musk speak with the calm certainty of someone who didn't just dream big but believed the universe would make room for those dreams if you pushed hard enough. Behind him, animations played of the sleek silver starship rising through Earth's atmosphere, arcing toward the stars, and descending into the red dust of Mars like a promise written in flame. "This isn't science fiction," Musk said. "This is happening. We are selecting the crew now." The screen went black. The signal had ended. But the echo remained. Ava turned toward Lily, who was now sitting cross-legged on the kitchen floor, her eyes filled with wonder. "Do you think they'll choose people like us?" Lily asked. Ava opened her mouth but no words came. She didn't know. Would they choose a single mother, worn down by years of missed chances and invisible sacrifices, someone whose brilliance had once made her the youngest engineer in her NASA cohort, before life handed her a different kind of mission? Or would they want astronauts, soldiers, scientists without ties to Earth? She didn't sleep that night. Her mind raced through every reason why this was impossible, and every reason it wasn't. The next morning came with the sun piercing through rain-soaked clouds and a quiet buzz in the air, like the world had shifted overnight. On social media, #Starship Crew and #Musk to Mars were trending globally. Talk shows debated ethics, survival odds, colonization rights. But Ava didn't care about debates. She cared about something else, the unopened email blinking at the top of her inbox. From SpaceX Command. Subject: Preliminary Candidate Notification. Her hands hovered over the mouse. She clicked. "Congratulations," it began, "you have been identified as a top-tier candidate for inclusion in the first crewed Mars mission. Please respond within 48 hours to confirm your interest and begin Phase 1 evaluations." Ava laughed, loud and sharp, startling Lily in the other room. "Mom!" Lily called out. Ava stared at the screen, her throat tight. This wasn't a joke. It wasn't a simulation. It was real. Her name, on a list. Someone, somewhere, had seen her. All those years of late-night studying after Lily fell asleep, her return to aerospace design work part-time, her contributions to planetary rover stabilization tech, someone had noticed. But at what cost? She thought of Lily's smile, her drawings taped to the fridge, the bedtime stories and whispered "I love yous." Could she really leave that behind for good? Would Lily understand someday, or grow up feeling abandoned, just like Ava had after her own mother passed away when she was 10. Her heart warred with her mind. She was 34. Not old, but not the fresh-faced dreamer she'd once been. And yet, the dream had never truly died. It had just been buried, waiting for the right moment to rise. She looked around the small apartment, the second-hand furniture, the overdue bills stacked on the counter, the science fair project on the table. Earth had never been easy. Maybe Mars was her chance to rewrite everything. She picked up her phone and called her best friend from college, Sierra. "You won't believe this," Ava said, her voice shaking. "Try me," Sierra replied, groggy. "SpaceX wants me. For the Mars mission." There was silence on the line. Then, holy sh*T. Ava laughed, a laugh that cracked into tears. "What do I do?" Sierra didn't hesitate. "You say yes. You go." Ava pressed her fingers to her forehead. "But Lily, Ava, listen to me," Sierra said, her tone softening. "You've always put Lily first. Always. But she needs to see you live. Not just survive." That night, Ava sat beside Lily on the edge of her bed. "Baby," she whispered, "what if Mommy had a chance to go to space? For real?" Lily blinked, considering. "Like Mars?" Ava nodded. "Would you be okay if I went?" Lily was quiet. Then, softly, "Would you come back?" Ava hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe not." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. Ava pulled her close, heartbreaking. Ava smiled through tears. "Deal." She held her daughter until she fell asleep, then returned to her computer. The cursor blinked at the bottom of the email. She clicked reply. Typed one word, interested. And hit send. The world outside her window was still. But inside her chest, a storm of purpose had begun. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But she knew this, the stars were calling. And for the first time in a long time, she was ready to answer. Ava Morgan had always been at war with gravity. As a child, it was the weight of silence in a house where grief took up all the air. Her mother, a school librarian who loved constellations and classical piano, died suddenly when Ava was just 10. A brain aneurysm, swift and merciless. One morning her mother was making waffles and humming Debussy. By that night, Ava was in a sterile hospital hallway, gripping a nurse's hand instead of her mother's. Her father never recovered. Once a charismatic art professor, he turned to alcohol and retreated into a haze of unfinished canvases and unpaid bills. By 13, Ava was already raising herself. She spent her nights on the roof of their crumbling duplex with a battered telescope and a dog-eared copy of Carl Sagan's Cosmos, tracing the moons of Jupiter and memorizing the names of distant nebulae. In the sky, she found order. In the stars, she found escape. The ceiling of her childhood bedroom was plastered with glow-in-the-dark planets and solar systems drawn in Sharpie. She'd fall asleep calculating orbits in her head, pretending the walls of her house were the walls of a spaceship. In school, she was the quiet girl with messy hair and a chipped front tooth who got perfect scores in physics and wrote essays that made teachers cry. At 16, she was offered early admission to MIT but turned it down because she couldn't leave her father. She chose the University of Texas instead, staying close to home while studying aerospace engineering, pouring her pain into propulsion systems and fluid dynamics. Every equation felt like rebellion. Every solved problem was a reminder that she could control something. At 19, she landed a competitive internship at NASA. The thrill of walking into the Johnson Space Center in Houston, badge clipped to her belt, the smell of coffee and ozone in the labs, it was the closest she'd ever felt to magic. She thrived. Ava wasn't just smart, she was relentless. Colleagues half-jokingly called her the Martian for her obsession with colonization models. She developed a new variable compression fuel valve that caught the attention of a small, scrappy company then known mostly for making loud promises, SpaceX. In her third year of undergrad, they offered her a part-time research contract. She should have been on top of the world. Then came Daniel. He was a photographer with a crooked smile and a backpack full of analog cameras. They met at a campus lecture on science and art. He listened to her with the kind of undivided attention she'd never received. For the first time, someone made her feel beautiful for being brilliant. They fell fast and hard. She got pregnant at 21. Daniel said he wanted to be a family. Ava wanted to believe him. She left NASA. Deferred her graduate program. Moved into a tiny apartment in East Austin with a leaky sink and a mattress on the floor. Lily was born during a summer storm that knocked out the power and forced the hospital to run on generators. Ava held her daughter in the flickering light and whispered, "You are the only thing I've ever done that matters." Daniel stayed 6 months, then left a note on the kitchen table and vanished to South America to find himself through landscape photography. Ava didn't chase him. She barely had time to breathe, let alone grieve. Between diaper changes and microwave meals, she studied at night and picked up remote freelance projects, CAD modeling for drone startups, thermal shield consulting for university labs. Eventually, she landed a part-time gig at a private aerospace company called Solaris Dynamics. They paid peanuts, but they let her work from home. Over the years, she built a quiet life. Safe. Functional. Invisible. She kept her name out of the spotlight, even when her work on atmospheric modeling was cited in papers used by NASA and ESA. She told herself it was better this way. No distractions. Just Lily, science, and survival. But sometimes, at night, when the world was silent and Lily was fast asleep, Ava would look up at the stars and wonder if she had disappeared too. The thing about dreams is that they don't die. They go quiet. They hibernate. And when the right spark hits them, they roar back to life with the force of a supernova. That spark had been the SpaceX announcement. And the email. And the look in Lily's eyes when she asked, "Would you go?" Now, as Ava walked through the metal detectors at the SpaceX evaluation facility in Brownsville, Texas, wearing a navy blue blazer that barely concealed her nerves, she felt like two people at once, the woman who had given up everything for her child, and the girl who once sketched rocket trajectories in the margins of her math homework. The lobby was sleek and futuristic, all glass walls and polished concrete. Holographic displays showed looping simulations of Martian terrain. Ava's boots squeaked faintly as she crossed the floor toward the check-in station. A young man with a shaved head and a tablet greeted her. Name? Ava Morgan. He tapped, nodded. You're in Group 12. You'll meet with Dr. Leo Grant for psych evaluation, then proceed to tech assessments. She nodded, heart pounding. Dr. Leo Grant's name echoed in her memory. He was the former Air Force captain turned cognitive behavior specialist who'd helped develop the Mars Crew Compatibility Index. A legend in both military and scientific circles. And now, apparently, her judge. As she waited in the glass hallway, she noticed the others. Some looked like traditional astronauts, tall, lean, ex-military. Others were younger, edgier. One wore a bandana and had dyed green hair. Another looked like a retired professor. SpaceX wasn't just choosing scientists or soldiers. They were choosing stories. Ava's name was called. She stepped into a dim, warm room that smelled faintly of leather and metal. Dr. Leo Grant stood beside a sleek desk, his salt and pepper beard trimmed, his eyes impossibly sharp. "Ms. Morgan," he said, offering a firm handshake. "Please, have a seat." She sat. He studied her file. Impressive resume. Creative engineering under extreme constraints. Mother to a 9-year-old. And, no active security clearance. She flinched. "I let it lapse when I stepped back from NASA. You left a promising career. Why?" She didn't lie. I got pregnant. I had to choose. I chose her. He nodded slowly. And now you may choose to leave her. Possibly forever. His words cut deeper than she expected. I'm not running from her, she said quietly. I'm doing this for her. To show her what's possible. He didn't reply. Just tapped his pen against the file, then looked her dead in the eye. Everyone has a void they're trying to fill, Ms. Morgan. What's yours? She met his gaze without blinking. I grew up believing the stars were the only place I'd ever belong. I still do. He leaned back, folded his hands. Fair enough. Let's begin. The next 2 hours were a blur of psychological evaluations, cognitive tests, memory drills, and ethical scenarios designed to measure her response under stress. At one point, she was asked if she would sacrifice a crew member to save the mission. Another, if she would vote to abort the mission if Earth communications were lost. She answered each question with brutal honesty. By the end, she was emotionally raw but strangely exhilarated. On her way out, she passed a window that looked out over the Starship prototype on the launch pad, gleaming in the Texas sun like a monument to human audacity. She thought of Lily. Thought of that small apartment. Thought of the years she had spent convincing herself that dreams were selfish. Maybe they were. But maybe they were also necessary. That night, back in her motel room, she opened her laptop and began recording a message. To my daughter, Lily, she said, her voice shaking slightly. If you're watching this, it means I've been chosen. Or I haven't. Either way, I want you to know something. You are the reason I kept going when everything else fell apart. And now, I'm doing this not to leave you, but to light a path you might someday walk yourself. I hope when you look at the stars, you'll know I'm out there somewhere, thinking of you. Always. She hit save. Closed the laptop. Then lay on the stiff motel bed, staring at the ceiling, and listened to the silence as gravity shifted around her once more. The following week unfolded like a dream Ava couldn't fully trust. Each day she reported back to the SpaceX candidate facility for more assessments, simulations, physicals, team exercises, and psychological deep dives. And each night, she found herself back in her motel room, alone with her thoughts and the growing weight of what she was preparing to do. Her body ached, her nerves stayed raw, but every test she passed brought her closer to something she couldn't quite define, a second chance, a new identity, a place in history. But just as the dream began to feel real, reality clawed its way back in. It started with a phone call. Ava had just completed a multi-axis training spin, still dizzy and sweating through her t-shirt when her phone buzzed. She stared at the caller ID and felt her stomach drop. Daniel. She hadn't heard from him in nearly 3 years. She let it ring to voicemail. 30 minutes later, a message arrived. Ava, I saw the announcement. I saw your name. We need to talk. This is insane. I want to know what's going to happen to Lily. You can't just disappear. She played the message again. Her fingers gripped the phone until her knuckles went white. Anger surged before fear caught up. That night, she called her lawyer, Marissa, a woman who had helped Ava establish custody years ago when Daniel vanished. Marissa answered immediately. You're getting calls too? Ava asked, pacing her motel room. Yes, Marissa said. He's filed a preliminary petition. He wants shared custody, contingent on your potential relocation. Relocation? Ava repeated, stunned. He means Mars. Yes, Marissa said, flatly. He's arguing that if you leave permanently, Lily deserves stability. He wants her full-time. Ava sank onto the bed, heart pounding. He walked out. He left us. He doesn't get to come back now and pretend he's a father. I agree, Marissa said. But the court doesn't care about emotions. If this goes to a hearing, you'll need to be prepared. Ava hung up, suddenly aware that the stakes had changed. It wasn't just about being chosen anymore, it was about what she'd be forced to give up. The next day at training, she couldn't focus. During a simulation of a Mars surface EVA, she mistimed a thruster burn and spun out of position, narrowly avoiding a crash into another candidate. Her instructor's voice crackled over the comm, laced with concern. "Morgan, are you with us?" "Yes," she lied. But her hands were shaking. Later, in the debrief room, she sat across from Dr. Grant again. He studied her silently for a moment. "Distraction is a threat to mission integrity," he said. "You want to talk about it?" "No," she replied, jaw tight. "But I'll get through it." He didn't push. Just nodded. "For your sake, and for the mission's, I hope you do." By week's end, only 20 candidates remained. Hundreds had been cut, quietly and efficiently. Those left were told they'd be evaluated for interpersonal dynamics in increasingly high-stress simulations. They would be watched constantly, measured for aggression, cohesion, empathy, and leadership. Ava knew the hardest part wasn't the physical exhaustion. It was being trapped in close quarters with people you didn't trust, fighting off both your demons and theirs. That's when she met Kai. He was tall, early 30s, with an ex-military bearing and a face that looked like it had seen too many sunrises from foreign rooftops. His file said Special Operations turned aerospace pilot. He had scars across his knuckles and a quiet intensity that reminded Ava of coiled wire, stable until it wasn't. They were paired for a resource recovery simulation inside a pressure dome built to mimic the Martian environment. The goal: recover 3 oxygen cells from beneath simulated rubble within 30 minutes, maintain communication, and avoid triggering any structural collapse. They moved with care, their radio chatter clipped and professional. Halfway through the exercise, Ava reached for a cell wedged between a collapsed beam and loose rock. "Hold the beam steady," she said, wedging a tool underneath. "Got it," Kai replied, bracing the support. As she pulled the cell free, the beam slipped an inch. Just enough to rattle her. "Hey," she snapped. "I said hold it." "I did," he shot back. "You shifted your weight wrong." "I know how to manage my own weight." "Could have fooled me." She glared at him through the visor, heart pounding. "Do you want to lead or do you want to survive?" "I want to work with someone who doesn't crumble under pressure," he said, voice low but sharp. The rest of the simulation passed in tense silence. They finished the task with 2 minutes to spare, but the debrief was cold. Later that evening, Ava found him outside the mess tent, drinking electrolyte mix under the fake stars projected across the facility ceiling. "About earlier," she said. "I don't care about your tone. But don't question my capability." He looked at her, surprised. "You think I care about tone?" "You do," she said. "You just pretend you don't." He chuckled, then offered a sip from his bottle. "Truce." She hesitated, then took it. "Truce. But don't push me." I could say the same. Over the next few days, something shifted between them. Their arguments turned into debates. Their glares softened into smirks. There was no romance, no trust, but a mutual recognition. They were two people with buried fires and unfinished business, standing at the edge of the same impossible cliff. Then came the bombshell. During a closed-door briefing, Elon Musk himself addressed the final candidates via video link. His face appeared on the wall, leaner than usual, eyes intense. "You've made it further than thousands of others," he said. "But we're not just testing skills. We're testing belief. Because this isn't just a mission. It's a covenant. If you go, there's no guarantee you return. If something fails, you can't call for help. You'll be alone. Possibly for years. Possibly forever. If that scares you, good. It should. But if it excites you more, you may just be the kind of person we need." When the video ended, the room was silent. Ava stared at the wall long after the screen went black. That night, she called Sierra. Her voice cracked. He's trying to get custody. Daniel? He wants Lily. If I go, he wants her full time. You think he's doing it to hurt you? I don't know, Ava whispered. But he might win. Sierra didn't sugarcoat it. If it goes to court, they'll see he has a stable income now. He'll argue you're abandoning her. They'll want Lily to have consistency. Ava leaned against the wall, sliding to the floor. I thought this was my chance. To do something that mattered. But I can't lose her. I can't. Then maybe you don't go, Sierra said. Or maybe, you find a way to make both things possible. How? Ava whispered. Sierra didn't answer. Because there wasn't one. Not yet. 2 days later, Ava was called into a one-on-one evaluation with the panel. Engineers, mission directors, behavioral specialists. Dr. Grant sat in the middle. Ms. Morgan, he said. You've tested high in all metrics. But we've received a legal challenge from a family member regarding your potential deployment. Can you speak to that? Ava swallowed hard. Yes. My daughter's father is pursuing legal action. He wants custody if I leave. Will this affect your performance? It already does, she said honestly. Every hour I'm here, I'm thinking about her. Every test I pass, I wonder what it's costing me. But I'm still here. I'm still passing. One of the mission specialists leaned forward. Why do you want to go? Ava didn't blink. Because I believe this mission will define a generation. And because I want my daughter to grow up in a world where mothers are remembered not just for what they gave up, but for what they dared to do. The room went quiet. Dr. Grant gave the faintest nod. That'll be all. As Ava left the room, her heart was thundering. She knew nothing was guaranteed. But she also knew this, she wasn't backing down. Not from the mission. Not from Daniel. Not from the past that had tried so hard to keep her grounded. She was still at war with gravity. But now, she was learning to fight back. The air at the SpaceX Boca Chica launch site felt heavier than usual, the kind of heat that pressed into your chest and made every breath feel earned. The Starship stood tall against the skyline like a monument from the future, its chrome skin gleaming under the punishing Texas sun. For Ava Morgan, the sight of it wasn't just awe-inspiring, it was personal. She had sketched versions of this ship in the margins of her notebooks as a teenager, had studied early models when most people still called Elon Musk a dreamer or a lunatic. Now, she stood in the shadow of the real thing, wearing a black compression flight suit with her last name stitched above her heart and sweat trickling down her spine. Today wasn't just another evaluation. Today was the full mission simulation, the Starship test. The top 12 candidates, including Ava and Kai, were about to enter a full-scale Starship mock-up for 72 continuous hours, living, working, solving emergencies, and enduring isolation exactly as they would on the journey to Mars. Everything would be monitored: vitals, emotional responses, leadership tendencies, group chemistry. It wasn't just about being brilliant or brave. It was about being endurable. This isn't just a test of who survives, one mission officer had told them during briefing. It's a test of who people want to survive with. As the crew gathered on the staging platform, Ava noticed the tension rippling through them. Rachel, the roboticist from Seattle, kept readying her ponytail. Darius, the mission doctor from Chicago, cracked his knuckles obsessively. Kai stood near the edge, arms crossed, scanning the ship like it was a battlefield. They weren't friends, not yet, but in that moment, Ava realized something had shifted since their rocky beginning. They trusted each other now. Or at least understood each other's limits. Hey, she said, walking over. Don't crash us into a Martian canyon, all right? He raised an eyebrow. Only if you promise not to panic in the airlock again. She smirked. Deal. An overhead speaker crackled. Crew 12, board now. One by one, they stepped into the belly of the beast. The interior was sterile and surreal, all white panels, narrow corridors, and low humming from unseen machinery. Each crew member had a bunk, a workstation, and assigned emergency tasks. Ava's role, engineering lead. She was responsible for life support systems, propulsion simulation, and damage assessment. It was the role she had dreamed of since childhood, and now it was hers, at least for 3 days. The first 12 hours went smoothly. Tasks were coordinated. Communication flowed. They ran diagnostics, performed simulated spacewalks, and even shared a dehydrated dinner around the central module, laughing nervously about freeze-dried mac and cheese. But beneath the camaraderie, Ava felt the undercurrent of stress winding tighter. On day 2, things changed. It started with a simulated solar flare. Red lights flashed. Sirens wailed. A system-wide warning signaled radiation spike protocols. Ava was in the middle of recalibrating the water recycling module when the announcement hit. Warning. Crew must shelter. Radiation storm in progress. T-4 minutes. Everyone scrambled. They sealed off compartments, secured equipment, and rushed to the radiation shelter, a heavily shielded central room designed for exactly this purpose. But when they arrived, there was a problem. One hatch refused to lock. The mechanism jammed midway, leaving a breach in their virtual shielding. "We're exposed," Rachel said, panic rising in her voice. "We can't survive 4 hours like this. Even in simulation." "Could be a test," Darius said. "See how we handle system failure." "Or it could be an actual fault," Ava said, crouching beside the hatch. "If this were Mars, there's no one to call for help. We fix it or we die." She pulled up her tablet, quickly reviewing schematics. The locking piston showed a pressure imbalance. "I need someone to hold the inner pressure panel steady while I recalibrate the valve." "I'll do it," Kai said. They worked in tense silence, tools clinking, fingers moving fast. Ava's mind worked 2 steps ahead, visualizing what failure would look like. If the panel blew under pressure, it would vent the entire shelter. Even in simulation, that could trigger disqualification. Her hands trembled for a second, then she stilled them. This was her moment. "Valve releasing," she said. "Kai, now." He grunted, forcing the panel back. "Go. Lock it." Ava slid the new calibration module into place and hit the override. The hatch sealed with a final, satisfying thunk. The lights shifted from red to green. Radiation shielding active, the computer intoned. A collective breath was released. "Good work," someone said. Ava nodded but didn't look up. She was already back in her head, analyzing what she could have done better. That night, or what passed for night in a lightless metal tube, Ava lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling and thinking of Lily. She hadn't heard from her in 4 days. Not because she didn't want to, but because she wasn't allowed to. The isolation protocol meant no contact with the outside world, not even a voice message. Her chest ached with guilt. What if Lily was scared? What if Daniel had already filed for an emergency custody order? The thought made her feel like she was suffocating. A whisper came from the bunk below. "You still awake?" It was Kai. "Yeah," she said. "Can't sleep." "Same." A pause. "You think you'll make the final cut?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Some days I feel like I'm born for this. Other days I wonder if I'm just trying to prove I haven't wasted my life." Silence again. Then, "That why you froze in the first EVA sim?" "You noticed." "I notice everything." She exhaled. "I froze because I was thinking about my daughter. She's 9. She's everything. And you're about to leave her. Maybe. That's not something most people could do. I don't think I'm most people, she said softly. But I'm also not sure I can do both, be the mother she deserves and the explorer I want to be. Then maybe you have to be the kind of mother who shows her what's possible. Ava swallowed hard. Yeah. Maybe. Day 3 brought the final challenge, a simulated hull breach. Without warning, the main cabin depressurized and power cut out. Emergency lights blinked red. Ava's heart pounded as oxygen levels dropped on the readout. The crew scattered into pre-assigned roles. She bolted for the control module, working with Kai and Rachel to locate the breach. Rear panel, Rachel shouted. We've got pressure loss in section 7B. On it, Ava said, suiting up. She climbed into the cramped maintenance shaft, flashlight in her mouth, tools strapped to her legs. The hiss of escaping air rang in her ears, even over the simulation buzz. She found the breach, a ruptured panel with simulated frost forming on its edges. In real life, she'd be dead in seconds. But this wasn't real. Yet it felt like it. Every second mattered. Every movement. Every breath. She sealed it manually, overriding the lockout and cross-venting to maintain balance. When she emerged, Kai clapped her on the shoulder. You saved our lives, Martian. Just another day at the office. The simulation ended 3 hours later. The crew emerged blinking into sunlight, faces pale and exhausted. Technicians swarmed them with checklists and bioscanners. No one spoke much. They didn't need to. They had survived together. That night, the candidates gathered in the mess tent for one last briefing before evaluations would begin. Elon Musk appeared again on the screen, eyes slightly brighter this time. In a few days, we'll select the final Mars crew. You should all be proud. You've done something few would even attempt. But remember, this isn't about fame or headlines. It's about building the first chapter of a new civilization. We don't need heroes. We need people who endure. The screen faded. Ava stared at the blank wall, heart hammering. Outside, the Starship waited in silence. And she couldn't help but feel that her whole life had been leading to this moment, not just the mission, but the test of whether she could hold her dreams in one hand and her love for Lily in the other without dropping either. She didn't know if it was possible. But she was ready to try. 3 days after the final Starship simulation, Ava sat alone in a concrete waiting room painted with industrial gray walls and fluorescent lights that buzzed like a broken frequency. The others had been called in one by one for final interviews, medical reviews, and clearance sign-offs. Now it was her turn. Her boots tapped restlessly against the floor. She hadn't slept more than 4 hours since stepping out of the mock mission. Part of that was adrenaline, part of it was the silence that followed the chaos. In space, you fight to survive. On Earth, you wait for someone to tell you if that fight meant anything. A door opened. A woman in a SpaceX jacket entered, clipboard in hand, her expression unreadable. Ava Morgan. You're with Dr. Grant and Selection Command. Follow me. Ava rose without a word, her mouth dry, hands clenched. They led her down a corridor that smelled faintly of steel polish and scorched ozone. The room at the end was wide, sparsely furnished, and cold. Dr. Grant sat at the head of a table, flanked by 2 selection officers, an engineer and a behavioral analyst. A digital screen on the wall behind them glowed with the SpaceX crest. Ms. Morgan, Grant said as she Saturday, you've performed in the top 10% of every evaluation. You showed composure under stress, led with clarity, and demonstrated advanced systems knowledge beyond what we expected. Ava didn't breathe. She just listened. But, he continued, your legal complications present a challenge. The behavioral analyst leaned in. We've reviewed your custody situation. Your daughter's father has not been a consistent presence in her life, but he is now making a legal case based on your potential departure. Courts may interpret your mission participation as abandonment. Ava spoke carefully. He's using this to hurt me. He wants control, not custody. I've raised Lily alone her whole life. I'm the only parent she knows. And yet, the woman said, the law doesn't interpret intentions. It interprets actions. We're not saying you're disqualified. But if you're selected, you may face a custody ruling you can't overturn before launch. Then I'll face it, Ava said, voice low. Because if I don't, I'll teach my daughter that fear gets the final say. Dr. Grant nodded slowly. That's what we hope to hear. The screen behind him blinked to life. Names appeared, 6 in bold. Ava's was among them. You're in, he said. Provisional slot. Final crew announcement will be made public in 2 weeks, pending one-on-one evaluations with Musk himself. You'll remain in training through next month. After that, quarantine. Ava barely heard the rest. Her vision swam. Her name, on that list, meant everything. She stepped outside the building 10 minutes later, the hot Texas air hitting her like a wave. She sat on a bench beside the vehicle bay, pulled out her phone, and called Sierra. I made it, she said, barely above a whisper. Sierra screamed. Oh my God. Ava. Are you serious? Wait. You're on the Mars crew. Provisional. I still have to get past Elon. You will. Ava smiled faintly. How's Lily? Sierra hesitated. She's okay. She's been quiet. She misses you. Anne. Daniel's been by. He brought her a camera. Tried to talk to her about the stars. Ava's stomach turned. He's laying the groundwork. Yeah. But she sees through him. She keeps asking when she can talk to you. I'll be home in 2 days. I'll explain everything. You're going to tell her you're leaving the planet? I'm going to tell her why. 2 days later, Ava stood outside her apartment door in Austin with her suitcase and a heart full of dread. Lily opened the door before she could knock. Her brown hair was messy, her eyes wide and serious. Mom. Ava dropped everything and knelt. Lily flung herself into her arms, wrapping around her like she was anchoring herself to the earth. I missed you so much. I missed you too, Starshine. They stayed like that for a long time. That night, Ava made them pancakes for dinner, the way her mom used to. They sat at the kitchen table while Sierra graded papers in the next room. I saw your picture on the news, Lily said between bites. They said you're going to Mars. Is that true? Ava put down her fork. Yes. I've been selected. Nothing is final yet. But if it goes through, I'll be part of the first human crew to land there. Lily's eyes filled with 100 questions. Will you come back? Maybe. That's the hard part. It might be a long time before I can return. Years. Will you still be able to talk to me? Ava nodded. There'll be messages. Delayed, but yes. I'll never stop talking to you. What if something happens to you? Ava reached across the table. Then you'll know I went chasing something that mattered. Something that started with the same stars we looked at from the roof. I'm not going to Mars to leave you, Lily. I'm going to Mars to make the future bigger, for you. Lily didn't cry. She just looked at her mother like she was trying to memorize her face. You promise you're not leaving because of me? Ava felt something break and rebuild in her chest. I'm doing this because of you. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ava sat with Sierra on the balcony. They shared a glass of wine and watched the lights flicker across the horizon. You realize if you go, Sierra said, you might never sit here again. You might never hear cars, or rain, or birds. I've thought about that, Ava said. But I also think about being the first human to walk across Valles Marineris. Or seeing Olympus Mons up close. And I think about Lily growing up knowing her mom helped build something bigger than fear. Sierra leaned back. That's beautiful. And terrifying. Everything worth doing is both. And Daniel? I'm filing a counter-petition. Full custody. I'll go to court next week. If they side with him, I'll make recordings. Messages for every birthday. Every moment I'll miss. She'll know I was never far. Even from Mars. Ava looked up at the sky. Especially from Mars. 1 week later, Ava stood in a conference room in Los Angeles, waiting for Elon Musk. The walls were bare, the chairs minimalist, the silence electric. When he entered, it wasn't with fanfare. He just walked in, sat across from her, and looked at her like she was a prototype he was still deciding how to build. Ava Morgan, he said. You're the most debated name on the list. I figured. Your file is exceptional. Your test scores are off the charts. Your peers rate you as the most technically reliable person they've worked with. But you've got a daughter. And a custody case. And a future that doesn't just belong to you. Ava didn't flinch. I know. So tell me, he said, leaning forward. Why you? Because I understand the cost, Ava said. I've lived it. Every day, I've had to choose between dreams and duty. And I still showed up. I know what sacrifice feels like. I won't break. Elon studied her for a long time. Mars is a one-way door. Even if we build a way back, it'll take years. You might die there. You'll almost certainly be forgotten by half the world before you even land. And you'll miss your daughter growing up. Ava's throat tightened, but she kept her voice steady. And she'll grow up knowing I was part of something that reached beyond the limits we all accept. She'll learn that love doesn't mean staying, it means believing in a future bigger than yourself. Silence. Then, slowly, Elon smiled. All right. Let's build that future. When Ava left the building, the LA sky looked washed out and ordinary. But something in her chest had shifted. The decision had been made. She was going. Not just to Mars. But into the unknown. Into history. Into the terrifying possibility that she could live for something more than survival. And as the wind picked up around her and traffic hummed in the distance, Ava Morgan closed her eyes and felt the gravity of Earth begin to loosen its grip. The days leading up to the public crew announcement blurred into a haze of final preparations, contract signatures, and non-stop media buzz that Ava couldn't escape even if she wanted to. The news cycle had latched onto the mission like it was the moon landing, spinning every detail into headlines. The Mars 6, meet the humans who will never come back. Ava Morgan, single mother, engineer, Martian pioneer, from Earth to eternity, Starship's crew finalized. Ava avoided reading any of it. What mattered to her wasn't the world's opinion, it was the silence that came when Lily asked nothing at all. Her daughter hadn't brought up Mars again after that first conversation. She ate dinner. She did her homework. She hugged Ava tightly every night. But the words that once came easily between them had shrunk into glances, half-smiles, and quiet understanding. Ava didn't push. She just made space. The day of the announcement arrived with heavy skies and stiff wind. The crew was gathered inside the Starbase Media Hall, a massive white structure filled with camera rigs, press passes, and technicians speaking in clipped codes. The backdrop was dramatic, a full-scale image of Mars stretching across the screen behind the stage, with Starship, Mission 1 emblazoned beneath it in silver letters. Ava stood beside the other 5 crew members, all dressed in matching gray-black flight suits. Kai was to her right, arms behind his back, eyes scanning the crowd like a soldier awaiting orders. Rachel stood on her left, nerves showing through her clenched jaw. Darius, Yui, and Antoine, each chosen for expertise across medicine, biology, astrophysics, and logistics, completed the circle. Together, they looked like the blueprint of a new civilization. The crowd hushed as Elon Musk took the stage. Dressed in a simple blazer and jeans, he didn't speak with the swagger Ava had expected. Instead, he carried the quiet weight of someone who understood what this truly meant. This, he began, is the culmination of 20 years of failure, learning, and refusal to give up. We are sending humans to Mars. Not as explorers alone, but as settlers. Builders. Dreamers. Survivors. These 6 people behind me represent the best of humanity. They aren't perfect. But they're ready. Ready to go farther than anyone ever has. And maybe never come back. There was a pause, the gravity of his words sinking in. The window opens in 6 months. That's when Earth and Mars align. That's when we go. For those of you who doubt us, I understand. We've doubted ourselves. But history has always belonged to those who kept going. He turned to the crew and nodded. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mars 6. Flashbulbs erupted like a strobe storm. The crew stood still, trained to withstand scrutiny, fear, expectation. Ava found Lily in the front row, next to Sierra. Her daughter's eyes were wide, locked on her mother. Ava gave the smallest smile, one only Lily would recognize. The one she used when reading bedtime stories. I'm still here. Afterward, the crew was ushered through a flood of interviews, panels, and meet-and-greet handshakes with government officials, scientists, and a few very quiet celebrities who had bought early passage for the second wave, assuming the first wave proved it could be done. But Ava didn't linger in the spotlight. As soon as she was able, she changed out of her suit, slipped out a side exit, and found Lily under the bleachers, away from the crowds. "You okay?" she asked, crouching beside her. Lily nodded slowly. "Everyone was looking at you. They said you're going to be famous." Ava tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Famous isn't important. You are." Lily looked down. "Will you still be my mom on Mars?" The question punched the air from Ava's lungs. She sat down beside her and pulled her close. "Always. Even if I'm 100 million miles away, I'll still be your mom. I'll be the voice in your heart, the one cheering you on every time you doubt yourself. And I'll send you messages, drawings, videos, everything I can." Lily leaned into her. "Will you take something of mine with you? Anything you want." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small plastic star, the kind you stick to a bedroom ceiling. "So you don't forget what the sky looks like from home." Ava smiled, fighting tears. "I'll put it above my bunk." In the weeks that followed, training intensified. The Mars 6 were relocated to a secure facility in Nevada, where they underwent constant medical monitoring, robotic arm training, survival scenario planning, and speech therapy modules designed to reduce stress-induced miscommunication. Ava found herself dreaming in Martian landscapes, red sand in her thoughts even when she was awake. Kai became her closest ally. They worked together seamlessly now, without ego or edge. If the crew was a living organism, the two of them were its spine. "How's Lily?" he asked one night as they floated in the neutral buoyancy pool simulating low-gravity movement. "Brave," Ava said. "But I think she's scared. She won't say it, but I feel it. She should be. So should you." "I am," Ava admitted. "But not of dying. Of failing to make it worth it. You already have." That night, Ava opened her message journal, an encrypted digital capsule designed to store and transmit up to 10,000 letters over time to loved ones back home. Each astronaut had one. Ava had filled hers with daily letters to Lily. Some were funny. Some were tearful. All were real. July 18th, "You got mad at Sierra for not letting you have 2 popsicles. I laughed when I read her message. I know you. You argued like a lawyer. Keep that fire. July 23rd, they asked me what I would miss most. I said your voice. It's my favorite sound in the world. Don't let it change too much while I'm gone. July 27th, you asked if Mars has music. It doesn't yet. So I downloaded your favorite songs. First playlist ever on Mars will include that ridiculous llama dance track. Ava also recorded video entries, bedtime stories, science explainers, memories of Lily's first steps, her laugh when she saw snow for the first time. They were stored, encrypted, and scheduled for release 1 week at a time once the mission launched. So she'll never forget me, Ava told the tech who uploaded them. Even if I forget myself. The final month before launch was lockdown. The crew entered a sealed habitat with limited contact to simulate pre-flight quarantine. Only essential updates came through. That's when the legal letter arrived. Daniel had one. Custody would transfer to him the day Ava left Earth. The ruling was short, clinical. Ava sat alone in her bunk after reading it. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just closed her eyes and breathed. She had prepared for this. She had tried. It wasn't enough. But maybe, one day, Lily would understand. That night, she sent her final private message. It wasn't scheduled for delivery. It was set to transmit the day of launch. Ava recorded it in a whisper. Hey Starshine. If you're watching this, it means I'm on my way. I don't know where you are or how you're feeling. But I want you to remember something. I didn't leave you behind. I left for you. So you'd live in a world where we're not afraid of distance. Where we believe in impossible things. You're the reason I found the strength to go. And if I never come back, know that my last thought on Earth was of you. She ended the recording, placed the plastic star above her bunk, and turned off the lights. Outside, the launch pad waited. So did Mars. The sound of time ticking down had never been so quiet. Inside the sealed pre-launch facility just 5 miles from the Starbase pad, the Mars 6 were living in complete isolation, their contact with the outside world filtered through daily briefings, fitness metrics, and simulation exercises. No phones. No visitors. No distractions. Just the rhythm of routine and the knowledge that they were no longer preparing, they were leaving. 27 days until launch. Ava Morgan stood in the artificial greenhouse at the center of the habitat, gently brushing condensation off the leaves of a test plant grown for Martian atmospheric trials. The tomato vine, thin and defiant, curled around a vertical cable like it wanted to climb out of Earth's gravity all on its own. You know you'll be the first of your kind to eat something grown on another planet, she whispered. Hope you're ready for that. Behind her, footsteps padded in. Kai's reflection appeared in the transparent shielding. Talking to the salad again? She gave a soft smile. They're the only ones not nervous. You don't look nervous. I'm an expert at hiding it. So am I, he admitted. He handed her a data slate. Orbital team just finalized the launch sequence. All 6 of US will board 5 hours before ignition. No exceptions. Is it weird, she said, that this all still feels like a dream? Like we're going to wake up and find out it was just some elaborate recruitment hoax. If it is, Kai said, then it's a hell of a hoax. And I hope I never wake up. He turned and left, leaving Ava in the greenhouse's soft warmth, her thoughts tangled like the tomato vines. 22 days until launch. Sleep became elusive. The crew's stress levels were climbing, even under sedation protocols. Yui was developing a low-grade insomnia that made her voice tighter. Antoine had lost his appetite. Even Darius, the unshakable doctor, had started meditating with a level of desperation that suggested inner chaos. Ava found herself lying awake at night, staring at the curved ceiling of her bunk, hearing the faint hum of air filtration and wondering if Lily was staring at a ceiling too, hers full of plastic stars, Ava's full of silence. Sierra had sent a final report through the official channel, labeled with Ava's mother ID. It was short. Lily's doing okay. School starts in a few days. She asked if she can send something to the rocket. I told her probably not. But I'm saving it anyway. Miss you. Ava stared at the words so long the screen dimmed. Then she reread them. Again. And again. 17 days until launch. The crew completed the final EVA suit tests, stepping into the custom-fit armor that would protect them on the Martian surface. The suits were lighter than NASA's traditional designs, flexible, and built for endurance, with embedded water cooling, biometric monitors, and emergency oxygen backups. Ava's suit had a patch just beneath her collarbone, L. Morgan, embroidered in thin black thread. She'd like that, Ava said aloud. Rachel looked up. Your daughter? Ava nodded. She always says astronauts should wear names like superheroes do. I told her this suit is more important than any cape. Well, Rachel said, sealing her own gloves, I'd trust you over Superman. 15 days until launch. Elon Musk made his final in-person visit to the crew, walking into the control facility with the same quiet gravity he had shown during the selection. His eyes swept across the team, now slimmer, tougher, sharper than when they'd been chosen. They weren't just scientists now. They were pioneers. You're ready, he said. I can see it in your posture, in your speech, in the fact that you're not asking questions anymore. You already know the answers. He paused. Some people are saying this is suicide. Some call it a publicity stunt. Others say it's too soon. Too dangerous. Too ambitious. But they don't see what I see. He looked at Ava. They don't see that every step forward in human history required someone to leave comfort behind. He left a small silver box on the table. Personal message capsule. You each get one. Fill it with whatever you want. We'll seal it in the landing module. If something goes wrong, if you don't make it, they'll find these first. No one spoke. What could they say? 13 days until launch. Ava sat in the capsule room, staring at the open silver box on the desk. Inside, she placed the plastic star from Lily. Then she took out a folded photo. Her and Lily on the beach 2 summers ago, covered in sand, tongues blue from snow cones, both laughing at something no one else would ever understand. She slid it into the capsule. Then, in her neatest handwriting, she wrote a note on a small square of paper. For Lily. If the world ever feels too small, remember, you come from the stars. You're braver than gravity. And wherever I am, I'm still with you. She sealed the capsule with shaking hands. 10 days until launch. Final systems check. Starship's main engines were tested in a full-fire sequence that sent shockwaves across the Gulf and rattled windows 20 miles away. Inside the facility, the crew watched on a live feed as the booster roared to life, a thunderous burn that lit the sky orange and white. Ava felt the vibration through her bones. That's the sound of history, Yui whispered. That's the sound of no turning back, Rachel added. Ava didn't say anything. Her fingers were wrapped tightly around the small mission pendant each crew member had received, brushed steel, engraved with a simple Mars silhouette and the mission motto, Ad Astra per Audacia. To the stars through daring. 7 days until launch. The launch window would remain open for only 10 days, a rare Earth-Mars alignment that wouldn't return for over 2 years. If anything delayed them beyond that, the entire mission would have to be rescheduled. But delays weren't likely. Every metric read green. The rocket was ready. The crew was ready. The Earth, spinning through space at 67,000 miles per hour, was ready. Ava spent her last off-duty hour staring at the Martian terrain sim in the VR chamber. The headset showed her the landing site, Utopia Planitia, a vast plain scarred by eons of dust storms, now chosen for its sunlight, flat terrain, and subsurface ice. In her simulated hand, she held a small flag, not the American flag, not the SpaceX logo, just a white banner with a single word across the center. Begin. 4 days until launch. One last call. The communications director broke quarantine protocol for just 20 minutes, using a sealed, virus-proof satellite feed to allow each crew member a final video transmission to their closest person. Ava's screen came to life with a flicker. Then Lily's face appeared. Older somehow. Eyes a little wiser. "Mom," she said, and that was all it took. Ava's tears came fast and hot. "Hi, Starshine," she whispered. "Did you get the letters? All of them? You okay?" Lily nodded. "I miss you. But I'm okay." "You're going to be more than okay," Ava said. "You're going to be amazing. And I'll be watching you from up there. I'll see every A you get, every win. Every step. I'll be so proud." Lily held up a piece of paper to the screen. A drawing of Ava in her space suit, standing on a red hill under a sky filled with stars. Ava covered her mouth. "That's beautiful. You have a star above your bed," Lily said. "So you don't forget." "I won't," Ava said. "I couldn't." The screen began blinking. Countdown to connection cutoff. "I love you, Lily. To the moon and back and Mars and back and every planet in between. I love you more." Then the screen went dark. 1 day until launch. The crew donned their suits and walked the ramp to the Starship elevator platform. They passed a silent row of engineers and technicians, all watching with a mix of reverence and disbelief. This was no longer theory. It was happening. At 4 o'clock the next morning, they would board the ship, strap into their seats, and rise on a column of fire toward a planet no human had ever touched. Ava stood on the pad and looked up at the rocket. It stretched into the sky like a cathedral of ambition, like a prayer made of steel and fire. The stars above twinkled faintly, unaware, or maybe completely aware, of what was coming. She placed one hand on the hull. Cold. Solid. Real. Tomorrow, she would leave Earth. Tomorrow, she would become part of something larger than history. She would become the future. And Lily, somewhere under that same sky, would know her mother had dared to fly. The morning of launch began in absolute stillness. No alarms. No loudspeakers. Just the quiet of inevitability pressing in on every surface. Ava opened her eyes inside the crew quarters and for a moment felt suspended in time, weightless, even before liftoff. Today, everything would change. She moved slowly, deliberately, as if each action had weight. She brushed her teeth. She folded her sleeping sheet. She zipped up her flight suit, fingers trembling slightly as she pulled the cuffs snug around her wrists. She reached for the mission pendant around her neck, held it in her palm, and whispered, "For her." The other 5 crew members mirrored her energy, silent, focused, inwardly bracing for the greatest transformation of their lives. No one cracked jokes today. No one needed to. Humor belonged to the living room of Earth. What came next belonged to something deeper. At precisely 4 o'clock, they were led in silence through the final security doors, their boots echoing softly down the white corridor that led to the crawler. The transport vehicle that would carry them the final quarter-mile to the base of Starship was armored, sterile, and eerily quiet. As they sat strapped into their seats, Ava glanced out the narrow window. The rocket loomed in the floodlights, its silver body gleaming against the deep blue before dawn. It didn't look like fiction. It looked like destiny. "Crew of 6 confirmed," the driver said over the intercom. "Clear to proceed." The crawler rolled forward. Ava's heartbeat rose with each foot of distance. Every inch was a final goodbye to the planet she'd always known. When they reached the pad, a platform rose beneath them, lifting them toward the crew access tower where a final technician waited at the hatch. "All systems green," he said, nodding to each of them. "You're clear to enter." One by one, they crossed the threshold. Kai went first. Then Rachel. Then Yui, Darius, and Antoine. Ava paused just before stepping through. She looked back at the horizon, where the faintest line of gold was forming. One more second. One more breath. Then she turned and stepped into Starship. Inside the cabin, they strapped into their crash couches, custom-molded for maximum safety during ascent. The seats faced forward toward the main command display, with each astronaut's monitor calibrated to their specialty. Propulsion, life support, navigation, medical, communications, logistics. Ava sat front left, just behind Kai. Her hands were steady. Her heart was not. Pre-flight check complete, the voice came through their helmets. T-90 minutes to launch. From there, time moved in pulses. The hatch sealed. Pressure checks. Comm checks. Suit integrity scans. Fuel load confirmation. Ava kept her eyes on the numbers. It was easier than thinking about Lily. She'd already said her goodbyes. The words were sealed in capsules, stored in messages, carved into memory. Now it was time for action. T-15 minutes. Initiating autosequence. The rocket beneath them rumbled to life. Not loud yet, but deep, like a dragon shifting in its sleep. Ava felt it through her spine. This wasn't like the simulations. This was raw. Real. The vibration wasn't programmed. The temperature shift wasn't theoretical. This was Earth resisting the idea of letting them go. "Final go/no-go for launch," said Mission Control. One by one, voices answered. "Booster go. Ship go. Life support go. Comms go. Navigation go." Ava spoke last. "Cabin systems go. All systems green," the voice confirmed. Initiating countdown. The crew held their breath. Outside, at the observation decks miles away, thousands of people watched in awed silence. Some were journalists. Some were scientists. Some were family members. And somewhere in that crowd was a girl named Lily, holding a pair of binoculars too large for her hands, looking for her mother in a tower of steel and flame. T-10. 9. 8, Ava's hands tightened on the armrests. She whispered, "I love you," even though no one could hear it. 7. 6. 5, she closed her eyes. Saw Lily's face. Her messy hair. Her crooked smile. 4. 3. 2, Kai's voice came through the headset, steady and clear. "Hold on, team. We're writing history." 1. Ignition. Thunder. The world exploded beneath them. Starship's engines roared to life with a fury that tore through the dawn, lifting the massive rocket slowly, steadily, into the sky. The force slammed into Ava's chest, pinning her back against the seat. Her vision narrowed. Her breath came in bursts. But her heart soared. They were rising. "Max Q," said the voice. "Maximum aerodynamic pressure." The ship groaned but held. Ava watched the numbers climb. 10,000 feet. 50,000, 100,000. The sky outside the viewport darkened from blue to indigo to black. Stars reappeared. And then, weightlessness. The pressure released like a dam breaking. Ava's body lifted slightly from the seat as the straps adjusted. Stage separation confirmed. The booster dropped away beneath them, heading back toward Earth for recovery. The upper stage continued its arc toward orbit. Ava glanced at the monitor. Everything was green. All systems nominal, Kai reported. Course locked for Earth orbit. Prepare for transfer burn to Mars trajectory in T-4 hours. Cheers erupted over the comms from mission control, but inside the cabin, the crew stayed silent. No one wanted to break the spell. They were in space. Not low orbit. Not a test flight. Not a simulation. They were on a path to another planet. Ava looked out the viewport. Earth floated in the void, blue and brilliant, its cloud bands swirling in slow motion. For the first time, she saw it as something small. Beautiful, but small. A cradle. A beginning. And they were beyond it. She felt a tear escape and float upward, caught in her helmet until it was gently suctioned away by the visor's moisture vents. "How are you doing, Morgan?" Rachel asked, her voice light. "Breathing," Ava said. "Just making sure I still remember how." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of system updates, navigational corrections, and final preparation for the Transmartian injection burn. Ava checked and rechecked life support metrics, oxygen levels, CO2 filters, water reserves, thermal regulation. Everything was stable. Then the call came through. "Crew of Starship, prepare for burn." This was it. Once the engines fired again, there would be no return. No loop around Earth. No backup orbit. The next time they entered gravity, it would be Martian. Burn in 3, 2, 1. The engines ignited with less violence this time, but the force still pressed Ava into her seat as the trajectory curved away from Earth. The cabin lights flickered, then steadied. Ava watched the telemetry update in real time. They were on course. A line on the screen arched from Earth toward a red dot labeled simply, Mars. Trajectory locked, Antoine confirmed. Separation window verified. They were committed. Earth grew smaller in the viewport, shrinking until it was just a pale dot. Ava stared at it in silence. "Goodbye," she whispered. "Take care of her." Kai floated over, nudging her gently. "You okay?" "Yeah," she said. "Just realizing this isn't a dream." "It is," he replied. "The best kind. One you get to live in." Later that night, if it could be called night when there was no sun cycle, Ava opened her message terminal and recorded the first in-transit log. Day 1. We're officially en route to Mars. It feels surreal. Like everything I've trained for just dropped away and now we're flying without a net. But the systems are solid. The crew's holding strong. I watched Earth vanish today. Watched it shrink into nothing. And it hit me that we really did it. We left. We stepped off the edge. She paused. "Lily, if you see this someday, I hope you know, this is all for you. To show you what courage looks like. What faith looks like. Not in religion. In people. In science. In the future." She ended the recording. Outside, through the viewport, the stars shimmered with cold, perfect silence. And ahead of them, still invisible, still waiting, was Mars. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The weightlessness inside Starship was a new kind of reality. Ava floated through the narrow corridors, her movements slow and deliberate as she adjusted to the absence of gravity. The usual sounds of life, footsteps, breaths, creaks, were muffled behind helmets and thick walls. The distant hum of the ship's engines was a constant reminder of their fragile passage between worlds. Each crew member found their own rhythm in this confined space. Kai spent hours reviewing navigation systems, fingers tracing the paths of stars outside the windows. Rachel focused on the environmental controls, meticulously checking air quality and temperature. Yui immersed herself in medical scans and physiological monitoring, her quiet determination unbroken by the alien setting. Antoine documented everything with a kind of journalist's precision, capturing moments both mundane and profound. Darius kept everyone grounded, literally and figuratively, leading meditation sessions and overseeing exercise routines designed to prevent muscle loss. And Ava, the mission commander, balanced all these roles with the pressure of knowing every decision mattered. She studied the monitors, absorbing data, watching the course to Mars inch closer with each passing hour. Their speed was staggering, over 24,000 miles per hour, but the distance remained vast, impossible to fully grasp. Day 2 aboard Starship was marked by the first signs of strain. The novelty of floating gave way to claustrophobia. The air, recycled countless times, began to feel stale. Small arguments flickered like sparks. Rachel grew frustrated with a faulty temperature sensor. Kai snapped when his calculations were interrupted. Yui, usually serene, complained of headaches. Ava gathered the crew in the central common area, a small space lined with padded walls and secured straps. "We're not just dealing with space," she said calmly. "We're dealing with isolation, confinement, the unknown. All of it. We have to look out for each other." The team nodded, breathing deep. "Remember why we're here. For the future. For Mars." Later, as they prepared for the first sleep cycle, Ava recorded a private log. "This isn't just a mission. It's a test of the human spirit. Of resilience. I thought I was ready for everything, but the loneliness hits harder than I imagined." She thought of Lily, imagining her daughter's face lit by Earth's sunlight, so far away yet somehow connected by this invisible thread of love. On day 3, the ship's AI announced an anomaly in the oxygen recycling system. Panic rose briefly but was quickly contained by Darius and Yui, who worked through the night to fix the malfunction. The crew's nerves frayed, but so did their resolve strengthen. Each crisis became a crucible. Each solution, a victory. Ava found herself growing closer to the others in ways no simulation could prepare her for. One evening, Rachel and Kai shared stories of childhood dreams. Antoine recited a poem he'd written about stars and silence. Yui taught Darius a meditation breathing technique that helped ease tension. Ava listened, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and melancholy. This was the new family, united not by blood but by courage and purpose. Halfway through their journey, the ship passed through a meteor shower. The crew watched through the thick windows as tiny streaks of light flashed against the darkness. For a moment, the vast loneliness was pierced by the beauty of the universe. Ava whispered, "This is why we fly." They spoke little of Earth, but their thoughts lingered there, on loved ones left behind, on a planet that seemed both distant and fragile. The mission demanded everything from them: physical endurance, mental fortitude, emotional strength. Yet, it also gave them something unexpected, a profound sense of connection to the cosmos and to each other. As the days stretched on, Ava noticed changes within herself. The fears that had once gnawed at her now transformed into steady determination. She grew patient, thoughtful, ready to face whatever lay ahead on Mars. One night, unable to sleep, she opened the small silver capsule Elon had given her, touching the photos and letters sealed inside. Each one was a reminder of the world she was leaving, and the new world she was destined to help build. The final logs before Mars orbit insertion were filled with hope and resolve. "We are approaching the red planet. Soon, we will see its surface not through cameras or telescopes, but with our own eyes. We are no longer just explorers of space. We are voyagers of the human spirit. Mars is calling." The stars outside the viewport glittered like distant promises, silent witnesses to the audacity of human dreams. Ava closed her eyes and whispered once more, "For you, Lily. For all of us." Mars came into view like a burning jewel suspended in the infinite black of space. Its rust-colored surface, etched with valleys and mountains, grew larger with each passing second. Inside Starship, the crew held their breath, eyes glued to the observation windows and navigation displays. After months of travel, the red planet was no longer a distant dream or blurry pixel on a screen, it was real, tangible, a new world waiting to be touched. Ava felt her heart pounding in her chest. The tension inside the cabin was palpable, a mix of excitement and dread. They had trained for this moment endlessly, yet nothing could fully prepare them for the raw reality of arrival. The ship's engines fired once again to slow their descent from orbital velocity to a controlled approach. Every crew member focused on their station, monitoring telemetry and environmental data. The thin Martian atmosphere hissed outside the hull, a hostile environment that offered little margin for error. Atmospheric entry confirmed, Kai announced. The ship shuddered as it pierced the upper layers of the atmosphere. The heat shield glowed orange from friction, a fiery cloak protecting them from destruction. Ava gripped the armrests as Starship began its descent trajectory toward the pre-selected landing zone, a vast plain near the equator known as Elysium Planitia. The landers had been scouting from orbit for months, selecting the safest possible spot for touchdown. Below, dust storms churned like restless ghosts, reminding the crew of the planet's wild nature. Visibility dropping due to dust, Rachel reported, her voice steady but concerned. The automated landing systems kicked in, guiding Starship through the thin, turbulent air. The ship's thrusters fired in rapid bursts, slowing their descent to a crawl. The crew could see the surface details sharpen, rocky outcrops, small craters, and frozen ice patches glinting in the sunlight. Ava's eyes filled with tears as the reality sank in. They were moments from setting foot on Mars. "Prepare for landing," she commanded softly. The ship's legs deployed with a mechanical whir, extending downward toward the dusty ground. Outside, the Martian wind picked up, swirling red dust around the base of the landing pad. Time seemed to stretch as the engines countered gravity's pull, balancing Starship delicately above the surface. Finally, the landing legs touched down, and the entire ship trembled as it settled. The cabin was silent except for the soft beeping of instruments. "Touchdown confirmed," Kai said, breaking the stillness. Relief and exhilaration flooded the crew. Ava let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. This was it. They had arrived. The voice from Mission Control echoed through the comms, crackling with static but unmistakably filled with joy. "Congratulations, Starship crew. You've made history." Ava smiled, wiping a tear away. "Thank you, Control. We couldn't have done it without you." But even as the initial euphoria settled, the crew knew the hard work was just beginning. Outside, Mars awaited with its harsh, alien landscape. The airlock sequence was brief but intense. Ava's hands trembled slightly as she double-checked the suit seals and oxygen levels. One by one, the crew donned their helmets and stepped into the airlock chamber. The hiss of pressure equalizing filled the space, then the outer hatch slid open to reveal the Martian surface. A cloud of red dust billowed inward before settling. Ava took the first step, her boots imprinting a fresh mark on the untouched soil. The gravity felt lighter, about 38% of Earth's, and she had to adjust her movements accordingly. She looked around at the horizon. Vast, desolate, and breathtaking. The sky was a pale salmon color, with the faintest hint of clouds. Mountains rose in the distance, jagged and imposing. The silence was overwhelming. No birds. No wind. No familiar sounds of life. Yet, in that silence was a profound sense of possibility. "This is for all humanity," Ava whispered into her calm. The crew fanned out, performing their initial surveys and deploying instruments to analyze soil composition and atmospheric conditions. Every detail mattered. Each sample could hold clues to Mars's past, and the future of human settlement. Hours passed in a flurry of activity. The crew worked tirelessly, despite exhaustion, knowing every moment was precious. They sent back pictures and data streams to Earth, sharing their first steps and discoveries. As night fell, Mars's temperature plummeted. The crew returned to Starship, peeling off their dusty suits and settling in for their first night. Ava gazed out the window, watching the two moons, Phobos and Deimos, circle overhead like silent guardians. She thought again of Lily, wishing she could see this alien beauty through a child's eyes. Despite the challenges ahead, the isolation, the dangers, the unknown, Ava felt a deep well of hope. They had crossed the impossible distance and now stood on the threshold of a new chapter for humanity. Tomorrow, she said softly to the sleeping crew, we begin the work of building a home. The sun on Mars rose quietly, casting long golden beams across the red plains and glinting off the metallic hull of Starship like firelight on steel. Ava was already awake, suited up, standing by the observation viewport with her helmet tucked under one arm, staring into the Martian dawn. The landscape was still, a canvas of stone and dust stretching endlessly in every direction, alien yet strangely peaceful. Behind her, the other crew members stirred to life, voices low, movements slow. Despite the exhaustion of arrival, no one lingered in bed. They all felt the urgency in their bones. Today, they would begin building the first permanent base on another planet. Not a research tent. Not a short-term outpost. A real home. They called it Haven. The name came from Rachel, who said it in passing during training and never let it go. Now the word had stuck. Haven Base. A safe place in an unsafe world. A foothold for humanity in the dust of a new frontier. After a quick nutrient meal and final system checks, the team gathered outside, unloading the pre-packed cargo canisters that had arrived via unmanned freighters in the weeks before their landing. Massive crates unfolded into modular units, expandable habitats made of lightweight, radiation-shielded material that could self-deploy into connected domes. The modules hissed and clicked as they unfolded and locked into place. They looked almost like white bubbles rising from the Martian ground. Ava and Antoine laid the power cables first, unspooling thick lines that would link solar arrays to battery hubs and the central command module. Dust clung to everything, making visibility tough, but they worked in silence, communicating only with hand signals and the occasional check-in over comms. The sun grew higher, baking the red earth. Though the air outside was impossibly cold, below freezing even at midday, the suits kept them warm, pumping heated water through channels near the skin. Darius led the effort to establish the greenhouse module, carefully inserting plant trays into the sealed hydroponics dome. He moved with a surgeon's precision, aware that every seed mattered. Each vegetable or fruit they grew meant one fewer ration pack, one more breath of fresh oxygen. Yui and Rachel assembled the med lab and bioanalysis hub, loading instruments, securing samples, and prepping emergency protocols in case of injury or contamination. By midday, the shape of Haven began to take form. A ring of domes, all connected by pressurized tunnels, each serving a specific purpose: habitat, lab, greenhouse, control, storage, med bay. At the center was the central node, their gathering space, and from above it would resemble the petals of a flower blooming in red dust. This, Antoine said as he paused beside Ava, is the closest thing to a miracle I've ever witnessed. Ava nodded but didn't look away from the structures. It's not a miracle. It's work. Generations of it. Same thing, he muttered. The wind picked up around them, carrying a faint reddish haze across the base site. Ava checked her helmet display. Storm indicators low. We've got a few hours before visibility drops. Then let's finish the external array, Kai said, joining them with a bundle of solar panels strapped to his back. They moved like ants across the surface, laying panels in a radial pattern from the main hub, angling them toward the sky to soak up every available photon. Power was life here. Every volt stored was warmth, oxygen, food, communication. There was no luxury, only necessity. And still, amid all the science and precision, Ava caught herself staring at the horizon more than once, wondering what it would feel like for Lily to stand here someday. What would it mean to her, to see a place her mother helped create, not from myth or classroom stories, but from truth? By nightfall, the base was functional. Not perfect. Not complete. But real. The interior lights flickered on inside the domes, casting a soft glow that pierced the Martian dusk like lanterns on a long-forgotten battlefield. The team gathered inside the central node, peeling off their suits, boots streaked with dust, hands aching but eyes alight. Rachel passed around a pouch of rehydrated stew, and they each took a few bites, barely speaking. The silence wasn't exhaustion alone, it was reverence. They had done something impossible. "Welcome to Haven," Ava said finally, raising her water pouch in the air. "First human home on Mars." They all touched their pouches together and drank. Afterward, Ava slipped into the greenhouse dome, just for a moment of quiet. The lights above cast a soft amber glow over the trays of sprouting greens, lettuce, radish, microgreens, basil. She reached out and gently touched one of the small leaves. It bent under her glove but didn't break. Life. Even here. The thought hit her hard. Life on Mars. Not imagined. Not speculative. But real, delicate, and growing. Her comm pinged, and Lily's preloaded message played, her small voice echoing in Ava's ears. "Mom, I hope you can see the stars from there. I drew you a picture. I hope Mars isn't too scary. I love you." Ava closed her eyes. "It's not scary," she whispered. "Not anymore." She stayed in the greenhouse long after the others had gone to rest, watching the slow pulse of the systems breathe warmth and light into the tiny oasis they had built. The wind howled softly outside, but inside Haven, there was silence. Not emptiness. Peace. In her nightly log, Ava spoke slowly, words soaked in awe. "Today, we began building not just a shelter, but a symbol. Of what humans can do. Of what we are capable of when we believe in something bigger than ourselves. We've always looked to the stars. Today, we planted roots among them. Haven is more than a name, it's a promise." She ended the recording and sat for a long time in stillness, letting the enormity of the day wash over her. Then she stood, walked to the main airlock, and looked out at the glowing lights of the base under the alien sky. It wasn't much. Not yet. But it was theirs. A start. A beginning. The storm didn't come with warning. It came with sound. A low-frequency rumble first, so deep it felt like it rose from inside the ground itself. Ava woke before the alert sounded, sitting upright in the central habitat, heart pounding, eyes adjusting to the dim lighting of artificial morning. Seconds later, the base-wide alert pinged in a steady pulse, environmental notice. External wind speeds exceeding 60 meters per second. Dust event in progress. Shelter-in-place protocol active. She stood and immediately activated the crew comm channel. "Everyone check in. Report status." One by one, the sleepy voices responded. "Control, online. Med bay, secure. Greenhouse, powered. Habitat dome, holding. Storage sealed. Everything buttoned up." Ava sighed in relief, but it was short-lived. The walls of Haven shuddered as the storm made full contact. Outside, the light vanished completely, the sky turned from orange to black, and the base lights switched to internal power. Red dust slammed the dome's surfaces in a constant hiss, obscuring the landscape, coating solar panels, testing every seal and tether they'd installed. It wasn't a surprise. Dust storms were part of Mars. They had trained for them. They had simulated weeks of them. But this wasn't a simulation. This was the real Martian fury, the first of many, and maybe not the worst. "Power draw increasing," Rachel said from the command terminal. "Solar's offline. Batteries are holding for now, but the greenhouse draw is high." "Pull back up from the habitat loop," Ava replied. "We can run minimal lighting until this settles. Prioritize oxygen flow and thermal control." The crew moved swiftly through the modules, eyes heavy with fatigue, minds sharp with purpose. Antoine activated the redundancy relays. Darius secured all loose external equipment just before the full lockout. Yui checked and double-checked the seals on the med supplies. For hours, they worked in a flickering glow of backup power, surrounded by the ceaseless sound of sand scraping over metal. The pressure difference between inside and out created soft groans throughout the structure, the kind that crawled under the skin and made sleep impossible. Still, no one panicked. There was no time for fear. Just action. Ava stayed near the comm board, monitoring exterior vitals. Every 10 minutes she cycled through the dome cams, though they showed only darkness and swirling particles. No visibility. No relief. Just survival. At hour 9, the first warning signal blinked. Thermal loop C has failed, Rachel reported. Greenhouse temperatures dropping. Pull non-essential power, Ava said. Seal the greenhouse. We'll insulate it manually if we have to. If it drops below freezing, the roots die. I know, Ava said quietly. Do what you can. The team worked in shifts through the night, patching insulation, redirecting heat, preserving what little light and life they had. Antoine offered to sleep near the greenhouse dome, keeping sensors live in case of catastrophic failure. Ava didn't argue. Everyone was exhausted, but every system they could keep alive gave them one more day, one more chance to dig in and survive. The storm lasted 46 hours. By the end of it, the crew was hollow-eyed and sore, but the base had held. The greenhouse survived, though 2 of the trays had frozen despite their best efforts. One of the solar arrays would need full replacement, and dust accumulation on the outer domes reduced visibility to near zero. Still, they had made it. When the skies began to clear and sunlight filtered through the dust, Haven lit up like a glowing pearl in the red desert. Ava stepped outside first. The wind had slowed to a crawl. Her boots crunched over a fresh layer of fine dust that came up to her ankles. She looked out across the horizon. It had changed, smoother, redder, like a desert that had never known touch. Report, came Rachel's voice through the calm, clear skies. Stable pressure. Systems nominal. Copy that, Rachel said. You look like hell. Ava smiled behind her visor. You should see the storm. One by one, the crew emerged. They began brushing off solar panels, repairing joints, taking samples of the storm dust. They moved slower than before. Not out of fatigue, but from something deeper, a reverence for what they had endured. That wasn't just a storm, Darius muttered, dragging a toolkit across the surface. That was Mars saying hello. Yui chuckled. Then Mars has a pretty aggressive way of making friends. They worked without speaking for a long time. Every movement was efficient, purposeful. They were no longer astronauts. They were colonists. Survivors. Settlers. That night, back inside, Ava stood in front of the crew, the Martian sun setting behind her through a freshly cleaned viewport. I want to say something, she began. We came here with dreams. We knew it would be hard. But knowing something and living it are not the same. That storm was a reminder, Mars doesn't care about our plans. It doesn't care about our hope. We have to earn our place here, every hour, every breath. And today, we did. No one applauded. No one needed to. Instead, Antoine raised his ration pack and tapped it lightly against Ava's. To earning it. They all followed. To dust. To power outages. To sleepless nights and frozen lettuce and scraped knuckles. To resolve. Later, as Ava wrote her log, she hesitated before recording. Then she spoke softly. Mars doesn't welcome us. It tests us. And we passed our first test. Barely. But enough. I look around this place and I see more than metal and modules, I see resilience. We may not be from here. But we belong here now. Because we choose to stay. To build. To keep going. She paused, then added, Lily, if you're watching this someday, I want you to know, the strongest thing in the universe isn't a rocket. It's a human heart that refuses to quit. No matter how dark the sky gets. Outside, the stars returned. The wind died. The base stood. 3 weeks after surviving the storm, the days at Haven began to feel more structured, almost familiar. The crew had fallen into a rhythm, with each person responsible for specific tasks that made their fragile outpost sustainable. Ava found herself waking before the others, taking quiet moments with a cup of warm nutrient liquid, watching the sunrise over the Martian horizon as if it might bring some message or reminder from home. But today, the message came differently. At 0700 Mars local, the long-range communications array, still partially dust-covered and running on backup redundancy, flashed blue. They had a signal from Earth. High priority. Encrypted. Ava's heart jumped. It had been almost 4 weeks since they'd heard anything real-time. The time delay, the interference, the constant calibration, the system worked, but the messages were rare and limited to compressed bursts. She rushed to the command terminal where Kai and Rachel were already rerouting the signal through the interface. A stream of code decrypted into a few lines of text, then a video thumbnail. It's from Elon, Kai said. Looks like it was recorded 2 weeks ago. Run it, Ava said. The screen flickered, and then his face appeared, older than in the press conferences, but alert and composed, with that steady intensity in his eyes that never wavered. To the Haven crew. You've done it. You made it. We've been monitoring your vitals, your surface data, and we've seen everything, from the base layout to the storm reports. You're making history, and I want to say, on behalf of the entire team at SpaceX, and the entire planet watching, you are not alone. He paused, his expression softening. I know it's hard. I know you're tired. But you've taken humanity's greatest leap since the moon landing. You are building the foundation for generations to come. And we're behind you. Every country, every agency, even your critics. You've silenced them with your courage. There's another cargo flight launching in 3 days with medical supplies, lab equipment, and a surprise. I won't spoil it. Stay strong. Stay curious. You're not just astronauts. You're the first Martians. The screen dimmed. No one spoke at first. Rachel exhaled slowly, blinking more than usual. Kai nodded toward Ava. That video's going viral down there. You should know that. Billions of views already. Ava looked at each of them. Good. Let them see. Let them believe. But the surprises didn't stop there. A separate file pinged, compressed, labeled Family Relay Batch. They all knew what that meant. Pre-scheduled, time-delayed video messages from their loved ones. Carefully routed, short, but powerful. Ava hesitated. Then opened hers. The screen revealed Lily, sitting in their backyard under the sycamore tree that Ava had planted the year she was born. The branches had grown taller in the last season. The sunlight dappled across her daughter's face as she squinted into the camera. Hi Mommy, Lily said, her voice high and clear. Grandpa said you're doing great. I saw your picture on TV again. You looked serious. But brave. I miss you. I wrote you a poem. It's about Mars and how it's red and cold but maybe kind if you talk to it nicely. I left your drawing on the fridge. We're saving a spot for your helmet when you come back. I love you. The screen blinked off. Ava didn't cry, not visibly. But something inside her shifted, a soft ache blooming in her chest, like a pressure valve releasing, reminding her why every ration, every sleepless hour, every moment of fear mattered. The rest of the crew huddled together in the central node, sharing their own family messages in silence. Rachel had a video from her partner and their dog. Antoine's family in France had gathered for a backyard picnic, raising a toast in his honor. Darius's brother sent a video from a mountaintop, waving a flag that read, "Go Mars." Kai's parents, normally stoic, had tears in their eyes. Yui's twin sister had composed a cello piece, playing it against the backdrop of a lake at sunset. Music on Earth. Mars couldn't recreate it. But the memory of it, the feeling, pulsed in their ears long after the notes ended. Later that evening, the crew shared a rare dinner together without working. No lab reports. No mission briefings. Just warmth, laughter, and the kind of stories that made them feel less like strangers and more like a family. Antoine recounted his disastrous first zero-gravity flight, which ended with him throwing up on an instructor's boots. Rachel told of her high school science project where she tried to grow a plant using only Gatorade. Ava shared a moment with Darius where they sat on the floor, shoulders pressed together, staring out at the soft Martian dusk. "Do you ever miss the smell of grass?" he asked. She smiled. "Every day. It's strange what your brain clings to." "I miss thunderstorms," he said. "Back home, they scared me as a kid. But now I think I'd give anything to hear real thunder again." Ava closed her eyes, listening to the silence. "One day, someone will plant grass here. Maybe kids will run across it. Play in it. And think it's normal." "You think?" "I have to." When she returned to her quarters, she recorded another log, this one quieter, more personal. "Today, Earth spoke to us. Not through mission protocols or coded telemetry. But through voices. Songs. Laughter. Kids. It reminded us we're not just astronauts or explorers. We're threads of something bigger, a tapestry still being woven between two worlds." And today, the thread held. "I watched my daughter grow, for 5 minutes on a screen. And that 5 minutes was enough to remind me why I'll never give up on this place." She paused, then added softly, "Lily, if you hear this someday, know that I didn't go to Mars to get away. I came here to build a world worth bringing you to. A world where maybe we can stand side by side and look up together and say, we did this." Outside, the Martian winds had settled. The stars blinked faintly in the sky, quiet and eternal. Inside Haven, the crew slept. And somewhere, 140 million miles away, the blue marble of Earth spun gently in the void, still listening, still watching, still waiting. The morning sun on Mars rose slowly, casting sharp, long shadows across the base as Ava prepared for the first long-range walk beyond the immediate perimeter of Haven. This was no ceremonial stroll. It was the first major exploration push, the first time anyone would leave the safety of base infrastructure and step into the unknown for the sake of discovery. The plan was to reach an elevated ridge nearly 6 kilometers northwest of the base, a natural formation spotted during orbital imaging that could offer access to deeper geological layers. If there were traces of ancient water, or even microscopic fossilized life, it might be there. Ava reviewed the route with Kai and Antoine one last time, fingers tracing topographic lines across the digital map. No crevasses. No elevation drops beyond 3 meters. But if the wind picks up or we lose comms, we abort. Understood? Understood, Kai replied, already suited up. Antoine gave a thumbs up. Let's make history. They stepped into the airlock just after 0900. The decontamination cycle buzzed quietly, and the door hissed open to reveal the endless Martian expanse, flat and glowing under the pale red sun. Ava's boots made the first imprint, followed closely by the others. Their suits were bulky but efficient, each equipped with autonomous life support, mobility exoskeletons, and solar panels built into the shoulders to extend battery life. They walked in silence for the first 500 meters, heads down, breaths measured, comms quiet except for the occasional click of a sensor readout or environmental warning blip. Oxygen efficiency at 97%, Kai reported. Wind holding steady out of the northeast, 12 meters per second. Copy that, Ava responded. The landscape began to shift as they moved further from Haven. Small stone formations emerged from the ground like ancient ruins. Ridges carved by erosion or volcanic movement cast jagged shadows across their path. Every step was slow, measured, deliberate. There were no second chances out here. A bad fall, a punctured suit, or a failed oxygen valve would mean a life counted in minutes. "Looks like basalt," Antoine said, kneeling beside a crumbling rock slab. "Some of it fractured. Could be an old lava flow." Ava snapped photos and logged the coordinates. "We'll take a sample on the return." They kept moving. At the 3-kilometer mark, Ava paused and turned to look back. Haven was no longer visible. Only the endless reddish-orange dust. A faint structure on the horizon if she squinted, but barely. It hit her then, the scale of it. How far they were from home. From Earth. From anyone. But also how far they'd come. "Status check," she said, to mask the weight of the silence. "Green," Kai said. "All green," Antoine echoed. They reached the base of the ridge just before midday. The slope was gentle at first but gradually steepened into a climb that forced them to slow down and secure their boots with every step. Loose dust slid underfoot. Rocks shifted. Their suit joints creaked under the strain. The top was a narrow plateau no wider than a small rooftop. They reached it together and stood side by side, breathing hard. The view stole Ava's words. From that height, the valley below stretched like a dry ocean bed, cracked and rippled. Far in the distance, a black strip cut through the terrain like an ancient scar. "That's the trench," Kai whispered. "God, it's massive." "No signs of activity," Antoine said. "But the mineral readings are spiking. Could be sediment." Ava turned slowly, scanning the horizon. In every direction, Mars was open, wild, and waiting. It looked dead. But she knew better. Underneath, maybe meters or millimeters below, there could be history. Evidence. Answers. "Let's drill," she said. Antoine unpacked the portable bore tool, its arms unfolding with a mechanical buzz. Kai deployed the sensor drone, which rose on quiet thrusters and hovered, scanning the terrain in 3D. Ava dropped to one knee and began marking the coordinates. The drill engaged with a sudden, deep vibration, pushing into the ground slowly, grinding dust and rock. Within minutes, a sample tube filled with compacted layers. Pale red on top, darker brown below, and a thin black line that shimmered under the sunlight. "That's different," Kai said, pointing. "Carbon trace." Antoine nodded. "Running a scan now." The tension in the air was electric. If there was any carbon structure, it could mean organic compounds. Not life, not immediately. But life before. Or the chemical potential for it. The kind of find that rewrites textbooks. "Preliminary scan shows carbon and sulfur compounds," Antoine said. "Layered. Possibly sedimentary." Ava stood slowly, her fingers trembling just enough to make her notice. "Secure the sample. Triple seal it. Let's go home." The return walk was slower. Not from fatigue, but from awareness. Every gust of wind, every crunch of rock underfoot felt heavier. They were carrying something priceless. The kind of treasure that didn't glitter, but spoke. Mars was giving them something. Whispering, not shouting. As they approached Haven, the domes came back into view, faint silhouettes rising from the dust. Their lights blinked softly in the distance, and Ava felt something swell in her chest. Not pride. Not exactly. Something deeper. A sense of stewardship. This wasn't conquest. It was communion. Back inside the base, the decontamination process took longer due to the sample. Once complete, they moved to the lab where Yui and Rachel were waiting, eyes wide. "You got something?" Rachel asked. Ava nodded and held up the sealed container. We think it's prebiotic. Maybe more. The lab sprang to life. Under filtered light, the samples were split and scanned, layers analyzed. The black band in the soil shimmered under the microscope, carbon-rich, delicate, interspersed with mineral flakes and microscopic spheres. Ava stood behind Yui, watching the image come into focus. Are those fossilized microbial structures? Yui finished. Possibly. Too early to say. But the symmetry is intentional? Antoine asked. Not random, Yui said. Which is enough to keep studying. Ava leaned closer to the screen. There it was. Not a Martian city. Not a buried spacecraft. But life. The smallest kind. Maybe dead for 1 billion years. Maybe dormant. But it was here. Had been here. Mars had once lived. Send the report to Earth, Ava said. Flag it for international review. This belongs to everyone. That night, as the others celebrated quietly in the habitat dome, Ava sat by herself in the greenhouse. The air was warm, rich with the scent of mint and basil. She held Lily's drawing again, taped to the inside of her locker, and traced the crayon lines with her finger. The red planet in the corner was smiling. There were stars and tiny stick figures holding hands. She whispered into the recorder. We found something today. Something small, but bigger than anything I've ever felt. For the first time, I don't feel like a visitor. I feel like someone who's been invited. Maybe Mars isn't just a destination. Maybe it's a mirror. Showing us who we are when we're brave enough to listen. Outside, the wind carried the dust slowly, softly, over the sleeping domes. And beneath the surface, in the silence of ancient stone, something that once lived waited to be known again. The signal came at dawn. A distant blip on the radar, a soft ping echoing through the comms room, breaking the quiet hum of Haven's early morning operations. Ava was already awake, sipping synthetic coffee in the central node when Rachel burst through the hatchway, eyes wide. It's coming. The cargo drop is 10 minutes out. Ava was on her feet before the words fully registered. They'd been waiting for this drop since the day they landed, promised with the second launch window and carefully timed with Earth's orbital trajectory. It wasn't just supplies, it was a symbol. A lifeline. Proof that the connection between the two planets still held, that no matter the distance, they weren't alone. Wake everyone, Ava said. Let's gear up and meet it outside. The crew assembled quickly, suits sealed, helmets locked. The atmosphere outside was calm, the winds gentle, perfect conditions for the precision landing SpaceX had calculated down to the centimeter. They emerged from the main airlock just as the horizon shimmered with movement. High above them, a silvery streak cut across the morning sky. The Starship cargo variant descended gracefully, retrorockets firing in sequence, stabilizing its upright posture as it fell. Dust kicked up in a spiraling wall beneath it, and the sound reached them like a distant thunder roll. Ava held her breath. The massive craft slowed, hovered for a heartbeat, then settled with a ground-shaking thud. The crew stood in awe. Even after being on Mars for weeks, witnessing a ship descend from Earth brought back a wave of emotion none of them expected. It was the sound of home arriving in a new world. Landing successful, Rachel confirmed. No hull anomalies. Cargo status is green. Ava took the first step forward, leading the team across the dusty plain to the gleaming monolith. The Starship towered above them, familiar and foreign all at once. The bay doors opened with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a carefully arranged matrix of containers, all color-coded and marked with personalized tags. Yui was already grinning. That's medical and lab gear in the green zone. Food rations, greenhouse materials in blue, Darius added. Ava scanned the manifest on her HUD, eyes catching on one unfamiliar designation. Gold tag. Unmarked. She blinked. What's the gold? Rachel tapped her wrist pad. No entry. Must be the surprise Elon mentioned. Let's secure the priority modules first, Ava said. Then we'll see what mystery he sent. They moved with efficiency born from routine. Every crate was tagged and tracked. Antoine manned the loader drone, moving pallets from ship to dome in a slow, careful ballet. Yui and Darius unsealed temperature-sensitive kits, transferring contents to the med bay. By noon, over 80% of the cargo had been moved. Ava stood in front of the final container, the gold-tagged crate, its surface smooth and sealed with biometric access. Admin override required, she muttered. She placed her gloved hand on the scanner, and after a tense pause, the crate clicked open. The lid lifted slowly, revealing books. Dozens of them. Physical books. Leather-bound, cloth-spined, hand-picked and packed with precision. The titles ranged from scientific journals to Shakespeare, classic novels to modern thrillers, art books to children's stories. Nestled in the center, a small holoprojector with a note. Ava unfolded the paper. Handwritten. Elon's scrawl read, "You'll build a world. You'll need stories to fill it." She smiled before she even realized it. The rest of the crew gathered around. "Are those real books?" Kai asked, reaching out with reverence. "Smells like a library," Antoine whispered. Yui was already picking through the titles. They sent Pride and Prejudice. And Dune. Of course. Ava placed the note on the side and lifted the holoprojector. When activated, it unfolded into a three-dimensional display with a rotating library interface, hundreds of additional texts, movies, music files, and even guided meditation programs. "This isn't a cargo drop," she said softly. "It's culture." That night, they gathered in the Habitat Dome. For the first time since arrival, they dimmed the workstations, turned off the reports, and passed around the books like sacred objects. Rachel curled up with a copy of The Martian Chronicles. Darius found a collection of African folktales. Kai took an old physics manual, joking that he might finally understand Einstein now that he was off Earth. Ava sat cross-legged near the wall with a copy of Goodnight Moon. It had been one of Lily's favorites. The words felt different here. Heavier. More meaningful. That night, instead of logs or data sets, Ava spoke to the recorder about imagination. "We think of space as science. Equations. Physics. Engineering. But out here, we need stories. We need memory. Laughter. Wonder. Books are more than escape, they're the bridge between where we are and where we want to go. A kid on Earth might read about Mars and dream of visiting. A kid born here might read about Earth and imagine the sound of rain. Both dreams are important. Both stories matter." She paused, then added quietly, "Lily, I'm going to read to you when I come home. Every night. Until you fall asleep. And when you come here someday, I'll bring these same books, and we'll read them together under a Martian sky." As she shut off the recorder, the dome echoed with the sound of soft voices, pages turning, and laughter. No drills. No alarms. Just life. Mars had received another shipment of human ingenuity. But this time, it wasn't fuel or machinery. It was heart. And somewhere beyond the stars, Earth exhaled, knowing its children were not just surviving, but beginning to live. The tremor was small at first. A subtle vibration that passed through the floor of the greenhouse just after midnight. Ava felt it in her feet as she walked the rows of crops, checking moisture levels, the soft hum of hydroponics lulling her into a rhythm of thought. For a second, she thought she imagined it. But then came the second jolt. Sharper. A clinking of tools on the workbench. A flicker in the dome lights. Then silence again. Did anyone else feel that? Ava asked over the comm. "Negative," Rachel replied. "All systems stable." "Check seismic readings," Ava said. There was movement. Light, but real. She stood perfectly still, sensors open, suit mic active. After a beat, the alert sounded, low-level seismic event recorded at coordinates just west of the habitat dome. No structural damage reported. Got it, Rachel said. Magnitude 2.1. Localized. But, odd. Mars isn't tectonically active in the way Earth is. Not usually. Ava stared at the readout. Run a full subsurface scan on that zone. I want topography, pressure shifts, and geological stress models. The crew gathered in the main hub within an hour. The data was already coming through. Antoine frowned at the visuals. There's a rift line we didn't see before. Looks ancient, maybe buried under layers of sediment. But it's reacting to something. Thermal shifts? Kai asked. No, structural, Rachel answered. This isn't a heat anomaly. It's a cavity. A deep one. How deep? Ava asked. 14 meters minimum. But we can't see the bottom. A sinkhole. Maybe, Rachel said. Or something older. Something artificial. That word hung in the air longer than it should have. Ava didn't speak. She simply pointed at the scans. We need to go see it. Today. Outside? Darius asked. In this zone. It's unstable. So we move carefully, Ava replied. But if this is new terrain, we need to understand it. If it's a danger to the base, we need to know. And if it's something else, no one needed her to finish the sentence. They suited up within the hour. Ava, Darius, Kai, and Rachel formed the EVA team. Antoine and Yui stayed behind to monitor telemetry and provide fail-safe backup. The walk to the coordinates took just under 20 minutes. The ground was flat, deceptively normal, until the final approach. A visible indentation in the soil curved outward, wide as a football field. The red dust gave way to darker soil, almost volcanic in appearance. I'm seeing fracturing, Rachel reported. Microfissures every few meters. But the surface is holding. Careful steps, Ava said. They edged along the perimeter of the depression. No wind. No movement. The silence made it worse. Kai activated the drone, sending it low over the center. The footage streamed back in real time. There, Ava said. That void. Do you see it? At the center of the depression, the dust had collapsed inward, forming a jagged black hole, like a mouth opened in protest. The drone descended. 10 meters. Then 20. The light from its hull illuminated layered rock, twisted formations, and, suddenly, angles. Stop, Ava said. The feed froze. They all stared at the screen. There, beneath the surface, embedded in the rock face, was a perfect hexagon. Too clean. Too symmetrical. That's not natural, Darius said. That's architecture. Or something like it, Ava whispered. Rachel, bring the drone back up. We don't risk it further today. The team took soil and air samples. Radiation levels. Atmospheric integrity. Everything was stable. But something felt off. Like the planet had flinched. Back at Haven, the data stirred immediate debate. Antoine was already compiling theories. Could be remnants of an old lava tube, but the angles don't make sense. Mars has volcanic history, but not like this. Yui nodded. And that structure. It has layering. Interlocks. It was made. By what? Rachel asked. By who? The questions weren't answerable yet. But the implications were seismic in their own right. Ava recorded her log that night with steady hands but an unsteady heart. We always assumed Mars was dead. That its only stories were written in rocks and dust. But today we saw something shaped. Designed. We don't know what it means. Yet. But it means something. This isn't just exploration anymore. It's excavation. Not just a new world, but an old one. And maybe we're not the first ones to try calling it home. That night, sleep came slow for everyone. The wind howled against the domes in occasional bursts. Lights flickered just enough to keep the mind wondering. Outside, the rift waited. Still. Silent. A doorway in the ground. Tomorrow, they would go deeper. They descended at sunrise. The light skimmed the Martian horizon, casting long shadows across the uneven rim of the rift as Ava and her team suited up for the most dangerous EVA they'd attempted. This wasn't a mission for data collection or atmospheric readings. This was exploration in the truest sense, blind and uncertain, driven by instinct, evidence, and something deeper they couldn't name. Ava stood with Kai, Darius, and Rachel at the edge of the chasm, looking down into the darkness where the drone had stopped transmitting. Antoine's tether system was fully tested and calibrated. Each of them would descend one at a time, harnessed to a mechanical winch, equipped with helmet cams, motion beacons, and radiation shields. "This is insane," Rachel whispered as she adjusted her harness. "We've been here 2 months and we're already going into alien caves." "We've been preparing for this for years," Ava replied. "We came here to find more than dirt and echoes. If there's something down there, something made, it changes everything." Darius gave a thumbs up. "Let's make some history." Ava went first. The winch hummed as it lowered her slowly into the chasm, the dusty red walls sliding past her helmet's face shield. At 10 meters down, the light began to fade. At 20 meters, the shaft widened abruptly. She swung gently into a hollow space, her boots brushing solid ground. "I'm down," she called. "Floor is stable. Send the next." One by one, the others descended, their helmet lights piercing the darkness. The interior chamber they entered was a long, narrow passage carved not by erosion but by design. The walls bore patterns, not writing exactly, but symbols etched into the stone in repeating intervals. Triangle, circle, hexagon. Triangle, circle, hexagon. The formation stretched far ahead, disappearing into blackness. "This isn't a cave," Kai said, his voice hushed. "It's a corridor." "Scan everything," Ava instructed. "Keep moving. Slowly." As they walked, the ground remained solid, though fine dust kicked up with each step. The silence was suffocating. Not even wind reached this depth. The only sound was the steady hum of their suits and the occasional crackle of comms. Darius pointed his scanner at the walls. "Trace metals. Silicates. And something else. This isn't Martian basalt. It's been processed." "Processed by what?" Rachel asked. No one answered. The corridor opened into a chamber 10 meters wide. At the center stood an object, a pillar, 3 meters tall, narrow, made of the same processed material as the walls. Its surface was black, polished, almost obsidian-like, but cold and dull to the touch. Ava stepped closer, hand hovering inches from its surface. "Is it safe?" Rachel asked. "Nothing's registering," Kai said. "No EM signatures. No heat. No movement." Ava touched the pillar. Nothing happened. But as her hand connected, her helmet lights reflected strangely off the surface, splintering the light into thousands of fragments like a shattered mirror reforming. "What is that?" Darius whispered. The pillar shimmered again. And this time, something changed. A low pulse rippled through the chamber, too soft to hear but strong enough to feel. The ground didn't shake. The air didn't move. But their suits registered it. A frequency. A hum. Ava pulled back. Everyone stepped back. "Right now." They formed a loose perimeter around the object. Nothing further happened. The pulse had vanished. Was that a signal? Rachel asked. Maybe, Kai said. Or a reaction. Like it noticed us. Is it a beacon? Darius added. Or a memory. Ava, Antoine called through the comm, his voice sharp. We're getting a reading topside. Something in your position just activated. Satellite scans are picking up a faint burst of radio signal. Narrow band. Non-random. Can you triangulate? It's coming from right where you are. Whatever you touched, it's transmitting. Briefly. Then it went dark. Ava stared at the pillar. It didn't glow. It didn't move. It simply existed. Still, silent, waiting. We're not touching it again, she said. We record. We document. And then we leave. Until we know more, we don't risk triggering something we can't control. They scanned the rest of the chamber. More etchings. No doors. No exits. Just walls and one artifact that didn't belong. They ascended carefully, one by one, the Martian daylight blinding after so long in darkness. Back at Haven, the debrief was tense. So we found something manufactured, Rachel said. Deep underground. On a planet that shouldn't have structures. What now? We don't assume anything, Ava said. We study it. We analyze the data. We don't call it alien until we can prove it's not natural. It's not natural, Kai said. You saw the shape. The response. This isn't geology. Antoine pulled up the waveform. This was the pulse. And here's the frequency it sent after you touched it. Can we match it to anything on Earth? Already tried, Yui said. Nothing. No known language. No pattern matching. Just one single transmission, then silence. Then we treat it with caution, Ava said. This could be the beginning of something, or it could be an echo from something long dead. She paused. Either way, Mars just changed. That night, Ava sat alone in the greenhouse, staring out the dome at the stars. Her recorder blinked red, live and waiting. Today we walked into the unknown. Not metaphorically, literally. A structure, buried deep under Martian soil, responded to our presence. Maybe it's a machine. Maybe it's a grave. Maybe it's a message left behind by something we can't yet imagine. I felt awe. But I also felt fear. Because we've crossed into a space we don't understand. And history tells us that's always the most dangerous moment in any great journey. We've opened a door. And now we wait to see what's on the other side. She switched off the recorder and stared up at the thin red sky. Mars was no longer just rock and storm. It was a place with secrets. And they had just asked the first question. Now, the planet might answer. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?